All right, the next thing we are going to be reviewing in Algebra 2 is a pretty important concept from Algebra 1. We are going to be reviewing solving multi-step equations. So today you will solve multi-step equations, and you could ignore that part about special cases. We'll get to those a little bit later. Today we're just going to do the multi-step equations. All right, so to kind of help you get back into this, I thought what we would do is kind of go back to the beginning and kind of review how you learned to solve equations. So probably the first thing you learned how to do was you learned how to solve a two-step equation. All right, the first thing I want to remind you about is that when we call something an equation, what that means is it has to have an equal sign. So you can see this problem says that if we do 3 times whatever x is and add 5, that will be equal to 17. So this problem is an equation because it has an equal sign. Now, you'll notice I just drew a line through that equal sign because I want to remind you that an equation has two sides, and those two sides are balanced. 3 times whatever x is plus 5 and 17 are equivalent to each other. They are the same. Now, when you solve an equation, what you will remember is that your goal is to figure out what that x is. So when we solve, we're solving for x. To do that, what we attempt to do, our goal, is to get x by itself. So we want this x over here to be by itself on this side of the problem, and then we want the answer to be over here on this other side. So you will remember being told things like, whatever you do to one side of your equation, do it to the other, because that keeps it balanced. You will probably also remember that to solve equations, you use inverse operations to get that variable along. So opposite operations is what we want to do here. So let's take a look at this. We have 3 times x plus 5 is equal to 17, and we want to solve that for x. So our goal is to get that x along. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to cover up that x term. So I'm going to cover up that 3x. And so what I see is that I have a plus 5 over here with him. I need to cancel that out. So the opposite of adding 5 is subtracting 5. So I'll do minus 5 on this side, and then I have to do it to the other side as well to keep my equation balanced. So the first step is going to be to subtract 5 from both sides. Now, 5 minus 5 we know is 0. So this zeroes out. Okay, so we have 3x equal to 17 minus 5, which is 12. Now, we have 3 times x is equal to 12. So we see that this x is being multiplied by 3. So we need to cancel that out to get the x alone. The opposite of multiplying by 3 is to divide by 3. So I'm going to divide by 3 on this side. Have to do it to the other side as well to keep that balanced. 3 divided by 3 is 1. So now that becomes 1x is equal to 12 divided by 3, which is 4. So when I get down to this point, x is equal to 4, I have successfully solved my equation. I know now what that x in that problem is. And remember, you can check these. So if I were to put 4 in place of that x, then that would give me 3 times 4 plus 5 is equal to 17. All right, using GEMDAS to work out this side, I would do my multiplication first. 3 times 4 is 12, so I get 12 plus 5 is equal to 17. 12 plus 5 is 17, so I get 17 is equal to 17. So notice, if x is equal to 4, then that equation balances. The two sides are equal. So equations have to have an equal sign. That divides them into two sides. The two sides are balanced. What I do on one side, I have to do on the other to keep it that way. And I use inverse operations. So when I see that 5 is being added, I subtract to get rid of it. When I see that x is being multiplied by 3, I divide to get rid of it and get my solution. So that's where you started. You started out with those basic two-step equations. Now, as you learned more math, they added more onto your equations, of course. So one of the other things you did is you learned about combining like terms to solve equations. Now, like terms, quick reminder here, are terms with the same variable and the variables must have the same exponents. So for two terms to be like terms, they have to have the same variables, and those variables must have the same exponents. So just for example, over here, if I have 5x and 3x, those are like terms because they both have x, and those x's are raised to the first power. If I have negative 3x squared and 7x squared, those would be like terms because I have x as my variable, and those x's are both raised to the second power. So they have to have the same variable, and the variables have to have the same exponents in order for them to be like terms. And when terms are like terms, we can combine those. All right, so coming over here, I'm going to take my equation. I'm going to draw my line down through my equal sign so I can see my two sides. Now you'll notice this side says that we have 9x plus 1 minus 7x minus 5. This side we only have a negative 20. So when I look at this side of my equation, I see some terms that are like terms. They have the same variable, and those variables have the same exponent. So to solve this equation, one of the first things we're going to do is combine those like terms. So I have 9x right here as a variable of x raised to the first power. So when I look at my other terms, here's another term that has that same characteristic. It has an x, that x is raised to the first power. Now, here's something that's really important. When I look at that 7x, I need to also consider that sign that is in front of him, because that 7x is a negative 7x because of that minus that's in front of him. So that belongs to him. Okay, this 1 is a positive 1 because there's a plus in front of him. This 5 is a negative 5 because there's a minus in front of him. This 9x is a positive 9x because there's nothing sitting here in front of it, which means he's positive. So because these two terms are like terms, I'm going to combine those, and I'm going to do exactly what this problem says. It says to do 9x minus 7x. 9x minus 7x is 2x. So I've combined those two terms to make 1 out of it. Now, I want you to look at these other two terms that remain. I have my positive 1. Notice he doesn't have a variable. Okay? And then I have my negative 5. He doesn't have a variable either. So because they both don't have variables, that also makes them like terms. So I'll combine these as well. So I'm going to do what this says. It says to do a positive 1 minus 5, which is a negative 4. So notice, because it's negative 4, I'm putting minus 4. So when I combine my like terms, 9x minus 7x, I get 2x. And 1 minus 5, I get negative 4. So I get 2x minus 4. And that is equal to a negative 20. So combining like terms was a skill you also learned that would help you solve equations because it simplifies the equation. Now, what I want you to notice here is that now we have an equation that looks just like that two-step equation that we solved a second ago. All right, so now we're going to try to get this x by itself. So if I cover up my x, I see that I have a minus 4 that I have to get rid of. So I'll do the opposite, plus 4 plus 4. That zeroes these out. Gives me 2x is equal to negative 20 plus 4, which is negative 16. And now to get x by itself, I need to cancel out that 2. It's 2 times x. So I'll do the opposite and divide by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So now I have 1x, which is what I want. Negative 16 divided by 2 is a negative 8. So in this equation, the solution is x equals a negative 8. Combining like terms, terms that have the same variables with the same exponents on those variables. All right, something else you learned how to do is you learned how to solve equations that contain parentheses. So again, here I'm going to draw my line to divide my equation into its two sides. When you see equations with parentheses, you will need to make use of another one of your old friends from Algebra 1, and that is the distributive property. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we are going to make these parentheses go away by using our distributive property. Now, here are my parentheses in the problem. The number that you are going to distribute will be right next to those parentheses, right up against them. So this 5 is right next to those parentheses, right up against them. And I want you to notice this 5 is a negative 5. So to make these parentheses go away, we are going to distribute that negative 5 to everything that's inside. Now notice when you see negative 5 right beside the parentheses, that means negative 5 times 3m plus 10. So we're going to distribute that negative 5 by multiplying. So here we go. The 4m, we're just going to bring down. And then we're going to distribute. So we're going to do a negative 5 times 3m. Negative 5 times 3 is negative 15. So I'm going to put minus 15m. Minus because he's negative. Then I'm also going to do a negative 5 times a positive 10. Negative 5 times positive 10 is negative 50. So I'm going to put minus 50. Minus because he's negative. And then that's equal to 126. So when you see parentheses in your equation, distribute to make those go away. All right, now you'll notice that if I look at this left-hand side of the equation, I see two terms that have the variable m. Those are like terms, just like we did in that last example. So we can combine these. We can do 4m combined with negative 15m. Now again here, do what it says. So we're going to do 4 minus 15. 4 minus 15 is negative 11. So we get a negative 11m minus 50 is equal to 126. So this problem has parentheses and like terms in it. All right, again here I want you to notice that now we're down to the point where this looks like our basic little two-step equation that we started today with. So we are going to solve for m. We're going to get m by itself. So if I cover up m, I have minus 50 that I need to cancel out. So I'll do the opposite. I'll do plus 50. That zeroes these out. I get a negative 11m is equal to 176. And now I got to cancel out that negative 11. It's negative 11 times m. So I'll do the opposite, which is dividing, and divide by that negative 11. That becomes a 1. So I get m equals, and we do 176 divided by negative 11, and that gives us a negative 16. So the m is a negative 16. So again, that's something that you've done. Now, another type of equation you've solved is an equation where the variable is on both sides of the equation. So on one side of this equation, I have negative 6x plus 14, and on the other side, I have 12 minus 8x. When the variable is on both sides, the important thing to remember is that you must make the variable pick a side. you can't solve for x if he's on both sides of the equation. So you have got to make that variable pick a side. Now here's how we're going to do that. We're going to do that by either canceling out this negative 6x and bringing it over to the negative 8x, or we're going to cancel out the negative 8x and bring it over to the negative 6. Now technically you can do either one that you would like, but I would suggest that you always cancel out the smaller of the two variables. So when I look at these two numbers, negative 6 and negative 8, I know that negative 8 is smaller than negative 6. So that's the one I would choose to cancel out if I were you. The reason for that is that will help you keep things positive. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to cancel out this negative 8x on this side and make him move over to the other side of this equation. So what will cancel out minus 8x? Well, what will cancel out minus 8x is plus 8x. If I add it to one side, I've got to add it to the other. So I'm going to also come over here and add that 8x. Negative 8 plus 8 is 0. I have no x's on that side now. That's what I wanted. So let's see what we have now. Negative 6x plus 8x is going to be 2x plus 14. And that's equal to 12. And notice again here how we keep winding up back at that same place. We keep winding up back at those two-step equations. So now, time to get x by itself. We've got to cancel out the 2 and the 14. So if I cover up 2x, I see plus 14. I will cancel that out by doing the opposite, minus 14. Those zero out. We get 2x is equal to 12 minus 14, which is a negative 2. All right, now to cancel out this 2, this is multiplying by 2, so I'll divide by 2, both sides. 2 divided by 2 is 1, so we get x is equal to a negative 1, and there's my solution. So if the variable is on both sides, we have to make it pick a side. Now, these 4 problems that I've done for you are just a reminder of all the different things that you've done with equations in years past. What we're going to do now is put it all together and talk about how you're going to use all of these skills to solve a multi-step equation, where all of these things that I've just talked about may be in the same problem. So when you solve a multi-step equation, step 1 is going to be to distribute if necessary. You will know it's necessary to distribute if you see parentheses in your equation, and you will have to distribute and make those parentheses go away. Step 2, when you're solving a multi-step equation, is to combine like terms on the same side. Now this on the same side is really important. You cannot combine like terms that are not on the same side of the equation already. Like terms have to have the same variable with the same exponents on those variables. Step 3, is to make the variable pick a side if necessary. And I'm going to add a little note here. When you're making the variable pick a side, you're going to have to cancel one of them out. And if I were you, again, I would just cancel the smallest one, because that's going to help you keep things positive. All right, now, from these 3 things, distribute, combining like terms, and making the variable pick a side, those 3 things are all just to get your equation simplified so that you can solve it. So notice I have 2 steps left. And one of the things I pointed out as we did those last 3 examples is that we always ended up back at that same 2-step equation. So these last 2 steps are where you get your variable by itself. So what we did in every single one of those problems is we covered up that variable, and then we either added or subtracted to get rid of that other number. Okay? And then once we had done that and the variable was uncovered, then we multiplied or divided to get the variable alone. Okay? Now I want to point out something here about these last 2 steps. We reviewed GEMDAS, and in GEMDAS, multiplying and dividing were done before adding and subtracting. So I want to point out that when you're solving equations, you're actually reversing the order of operations. So these are the 5 steps you need to look at anytime you're trying to solve a multi-step equation. All right. Now, if I were you, I would pause the video at this point and copy these down so that as we go through these examples, you've got them to look at. So that would just be a helpful hint from me to you. Take a minute, pause the video, copy these steps down, and then unpause and watch the examples. All right, so here are some examples of multi-step equations. All right, so we're going to solve this first one. I'm going to draw my line through my equal sign so that I can clearly see my 2 sides. And I'm going to go through those steps that we just talked about. So step 1 is to distribute if it's necessary. So is it necessary in this problem? And I see yes, it is. I have parentheses right here that are going to have to go away. So I'm going to have to distribute to make that happen. And I look right beside my parentheses, right up against them, and I see this 7. So that's what I'm going to distribute, but I need to pay attention to my signs as well. So I need to notice that that 7 is a negative 7. So I am going to distribute a negative 7 to make these parentheses go away. So here we go. The negative 16 is just going to move down. We're going to do negative 7 times 2a. Negative 7 times 2 is negative 14. So I'm going to put minus for my negative 14a. We're also going to do a negative 7 times a positive 3. Negative 7 times positive 3 is negative 21. So I'm going to put minus 21. No distributing to do over here, so I'm just going to put 23 minus 2a. So step 1 is done. Distribute if necessary to make those parentheses go away. All right, now we're on to step 2. Step 2 is to combine like terms that are on the same side. So here I need to look at the 2 sides of my equation. On this side, I see 3 terms, and 2 of them are alike. My negative 16 doesn't have a variable attached to it, and I notice that my negative 21 doesn't either. So those 2 terms are like terms because they both lack the variable. What I'm going to do is combine those by doing what this says. So I'm going to do a negative 16 minus 21, which is going to give me a negative 37. And I have minus 14a. On this side, no like terms. This one has no variable. This one does have a variable, so they're not alike. So that's just going to stay 23 minus 2a. So combine like terms that are on the same side. We've got that done. All right, step 3 is to make the variable pick a side if necessary. And it is necessary because I see that a is on this side and on this side. So what I'm going to do is find the smaller of the 2 and cancel it out. So which is smaller, negative 14 or negative 2? The negative 14 is smaller. So I have minus 14a. So I'm going to cancel that out by doing the opposite and doing plus 14a. If I do it to one side, I do it to the other. So I'm going to make the variable pick this side. All right, these zero each other out. So now I have negative 37 is equal to 23 Negative 2a plus 14a is a positive 12a, so I'll put plus 12a right here. And notice again, we're back at our little basic two-step equation. We're going to have to add or subtract, multiply or divide, and then this will be over. So cover up a. I see a positive 23. So would I add 23 or subtract 23 to cancel that out? And the answer is I would subtract. So we're going to do minus 23 each side. Zeros out the 23. Negative 37 minus 23 is a negative 60, and that is equal to 12a. Now, one more step. We're either going to multiply by 12 or divide by 12 to get rid of that number. This is 12 times a, so it's multiplying already. So we're going to do the opposite and divide both sides by 12. Negative 60 divided by 12 is negative 5, and negative 5 is equal to a is my solution. So there is an equation that has all 5 of those steps in it. And I want you to notice, and you all have done this before, that you just have to kind of go through that checklist and get those done one at a time. Okay. Let's do one more example here. Draw my line, divide this into my two sides. All right, so let's go through our steps to solve this equation. Distribute if necessary. So it is necessary because I see parentheses right here. Those have to go away. And I see parentheses right here. Those have to go away. Now, on this side, I can see that right up against the parentheses, there's this 2, and he's a negative 2. So on this side, I can see that I'm going to distribute this negative 2. But I want to point out on the other side something kind of strange that happens because I don't see a number sitting right here up against my parentheses. A lot of people will make the mistake of thinking that the 5 is what they're going to distribute, but it's not right against those parentheses, so it is not what you're going to distribute. So here's where I need to remind you about something. You all know that if you see an X, like this X right here, and there's no number sitting in front of it, that there's an invisible 1 there. So if I see just an X, that's really 1X. Ooh, I've got that off the screen. So that X right there is 1X. The same thing's going on here. When I don't see a number right here in front of my parentheses, there is an invisible 1 there. So I'm actually going to write that in. So the number I am going to be distributing here is a negative 1 on this side. So to make parentheses go away, I'm going to distribute negative 1 to this, negative 2 to this. So here we go. My 5X is going to move down. Not doing anything with him right now. I'm going to do negative 1 times X. That is negative 1X. And then I'm going to do negative 1 times negative 18. Negative 1 times negative 18 is positive 18. So I'm going to put plus 18 because that number is positive. All right, on the other side, the 6 is going to move down. We're not doing anything with him right now. We're going to do negative 2 times X, which is negative 2X. And we're going to do negative 2 times positive 15. That is negative 30. So notice, if things are positive, I put pluses. If they're negatives, I put minuses. So we have distributed. We have made our parentheses go away. All right, now, step 2, combine like terms that are on the same side. So we look at side 1 of our equation, 5X minus 1X plus 18. There are like terms over here. This 5X and this minus 1X are like terms. They both have the same variable with the same exponent variable. So 5X minus 1X is 4X plus 18. Now let's check this side to see if we have like terms. We have 3 terms, 6, a negative 2X, and a negative 30. I see 2 of those are like terms. 6 doesn't have a variable and neither does negative 30. So I can put those 2 together. So 6 minus 30 is a negative 24. And then I have my minus 2x. So I want you to notice after we distribute and combine like terms, how much nicer those two sides of that equation look. All right, so we're on to the third step. In the third step, we are going to make the variable pick a side if necessary. And it is necessary because the x is on the left and on the right. So what I'm going to do is pick the smaller of the two and cancel it out. So I have a positive 4. I have negative 2. Negative 2 is smaller, so I'm going to cancel it out. A plus 2x is what it'll take to cancel out that minus 2x. I do it to one side, I do it to the other. These zero out, which is what I wanted. All right, so now let's see what we've got. 4x plus 2x is 6x plus 18, and that is equal to a negative 24. And we are back again at that two-step equation. We're going to add or subtract, multiply or divide, and this will be over. All right, covering up the 6x, I'm either going to add 18 or subtract 18. I'll need to subtract because I got to do the opposite. Get 6x is equal to negative 24 minus 18, which will give me a negative 42. And now to finish this off, I'm either going to multiply by 6 or divide by 6. It's already multiplying. So I'm going to divide each side by 6, and I get that x is equal to a negative 7. So my solution for this equation is x equals a negative 7. All right, hopefully that is a good review for you of how to solve a multi-step equation. The main thing I would encourage you to do is to watch your signs, because sign mistakes are pretty common in this. You need to pay attention to every number and make sure that you're aware of whether it's a positive or a negative. If you have any questions at all about this lesson, any of it didn't make sense, then please email me, call me here at school, whatever you need to do. I'm here. Give the problems a try. Please make sure that you show your work for me, and we'll talk again soon. You all have a good day.